Hi, everyone. Welcome. And today I am so excited because I'm having a conscious conversation with a dear soul sister of mine, Celeste Palmer. Now, there are so many wisdoms and gems shared in this conversation, but in particular, what I love about this is that, at least for me on my journey, I've always viewed this topic a certain way. It's so beautiful to see people stepping into their purpose and way sharing what is commonly known to be the normal of things, and she really approaches this in such a beautiful way. So I'm so grateful for this conversation and so grateful for her stepping into her service. And I'm grateful for all of you tuning in and participating in this, even though you weren't there during the recording. It's such a beautiful co-creation. And as always, feel free to leave comments down below. And all of the links to her websites or social media, if you're wanting to connect with her or myself, will be left down below in the description box. And so before I get to the video, I just would love to share a little bit about Celeste. Celeste Palmer is an intuitive transformational guide, sacred sound and cellular alchemist, and a curandera of traditional medicine of the Amazon region. As a shaman of light, Celeste is here to assist in the sacred purge and resurrection of the divine, feminine, Sophianic template within humanity and our great Mother Earth, Sophia Gaia. Through channeled wisdom and sacred sound codes, she assists others in melting away many layers of cellular imprints of separation, fear, and distortion within the physical, mental, emotional, and spirit body complexes. Celeste is restoring the original templates and teachings of sacred plant medicines that she facilitates in traditional ceremony as well as in customized client sessions, integrating breath and sound technology. This combination activates and rebirths the crystalline DNA codes within an individual, assisting them in deep cellular purification and embodying greater self-realization and wholeness within. Trained as a master integrated breakthrough coach, yogic movement and breath guide, holistic healing and mindfulness coach, and an ayahuasquera, Celeste has long been on a quest to be in the service to all. Without further ado, I hope you all enjoy. Here is the video.
How has today been for you?
Today was actually, I was tired today, to be honest. I shared a little bit earlier, but I also had kind of a late night. It was a lovely night, but I did stay up a little bit past my bedtime. So, and I've been holding space quite a bit over the last few days and in the evenings too, which is unusual for me, but also enjoyable. So today I am a little tired. Was a little tired. I'm feeling better.
Yeah, it's been, it's definitely been, I don't know, I'm trying to think of the word because like there's definitely been this ups and downs and everything. And I don't want to even like if I say like it's been intense, like that's just one side of the whole experience.
Right.
But yeah, this has been a wonderful experience also.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, but I'm like feeling almost it's like not being spoken as we're having have this conversation.
Yeah.
Is the like what's taking place on a bigger scale, which is for those people who might be listening in later, is the full moon in Scorpio and lunar eclipse portal, which just took place a few days ago. And of course, like some of the conscious work that we're doing in community together and also on individually on our own, it just seems like there's been an amplification and illumination of some programs, you know, and so it's just been, and then also, again, the sign of Scorpio, the sign of death itself, and like shedding and letting go and just the taboo topics. So it feels, for lack of better words, yes, it has been intense, and I feel that energetically. I'm like, okay, I've been doing some stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting because I hear about the lunar and being Scorpio, but I have no idea what that means. And I know what it feels like.
Yeah.
Do you have like just a basic understanding of that, or can you go a little
Yeah.
deeper with that?
So I used to practice astrology, and I weave it a little bit into my workings. And then every once in a while I feel guided to like tune in. But this particular portal,
Mhm.
so typically eclipses take place in sequences of two.
Mhm.
And so there'll be one eclipse, and then a few weeks later, a second eclipse. And this past eclipse theme was on the axis of Taurus and Scorpio.
Mhm.
So Taurus and Scorpio, they're opposing each other, or they're opposite.
Mhm.
And so they share the same axis, and so they're very similar yet different, or they're polarizing energies. And so in light of this, and oftentimes eclipses like just illuminate opportunity for healing and for greater awareness, and oftentimes it's around a theme. So in this case, the axis, the theme of Taurus and Scorpio, which is Taurus is like my resource, my value, personal value. And then Taurus and its hedonism and the ability and the capacity to enjoy life and like stop and smell the roses. And but it is, like on a lower expression, it's materialistic, and it perhaps is overindulgent, or even a little bit attached. There's like an attachment there. And so its opposing counterpart, Scorpio, is other people's. So it's like other people's, and it's all the taboo topics. So Taurus is my resources. Scorpio is other people's resources. So it's like inheritances, not only physical inheritances, but I would also say what we inherit from others mentally, like our belief systems and programs. And so it's generational. And it's a water sign too. So it's in the shadow, it's in the depth, it's in the unconscious. And I see Scorpio as very shamanic and mysterious, and deep. And so and it's the sign of death itself. And what's interesting too is this was the full moon in which the Buddha became enlightened, supposedly. And yeah, so it's almost like working within the material and like learning to honor and value the material, Taurus, so that we can transmute it into an exalted state of coming into union with spirit and like merging the spirit and the body.
I will just validate for that. I'm a Taurus, and that's really pretty spot on. Like to different degrees, but either way, I'm like, yeah, I would agree. That's been my journey, and I've heard the same as well. Being having such resonance in the yogic lineage, that this was the moon that the enlightenment took place. And without knowing any of that, what I would describe my personal experience with this is these are opportunities for great alchemy to take place. And when you mention like so much is coming up for us to be basically to be healed, to be looked at, to be integrated, to be released, or whatever it manifests specifically for the individuals. That's how I view it, as like you're alchemizing your reality. And during this time in particular, it has definitely been so potent, so up in our face.
Yeah.
So I would actually would be curious to know, not leaving anything unturned, if you will, or not just regarding the simplest things, but for someone who's going through this and being like, what the hell? Like, is there thing tools or things or practices that help you to navigate this with more grace?
Yeah, it's interesting that as you're speaking, I'm like, whoa. So I'm like having a just such a deeper understanding and understanding of what's been taking place, and even through the theme of like Taurus Scorpio axis. And I'm so grateful that you brought the word alchemy into the conversation, because that is really like, yeah, the sign of Taurus and shamanism, right? It's alchemy. And this question actually came into my field recently, like, what is a shaman? And so it's gotten me thinking, and I'm starting to recognize now too, it's without you, it's because of the earth. And in communion with the earth and the material, in which we're able to turn something into magic. And so one practice that I was guided to do this past weekend, it was on the day of the eclipse, which took place on Friday, was to give an offering to the earth, like a physical offering. And my moon's in Taurus, along with some other planets. So I know like you come to my apartment, there's like sheepskin rugs and like, like rugs from Morocco and textiles. I'm just like, I love beautiful things and crystals. Like I love beautiful spaces. And I had this seashell. Well, I had a pretty good size crystal quartz. It was a smoky quartz, and it had like hues of gold. It was really beautiful. And I got it in Sri Lanka a few years ago. And then I also had this seashell, and the seashell I was very attached to. It was just a gorgeous seashell, really intricate, stunning details. And I got it in Bali in 2012 when I was certified as a yoga instructor back then. And I was guided to bury the stone with my intention. So in light of like, please help me to and assist me in letting go of that which no longer serves me, to create spaciousness in myself and my reality, so that I can call in what it is I am, trying to actualize, or what I'm in the process of actualizing and manifesting. And so I buried the stone and I swam flowers out into the sea, and I dropped the seashell to the bottom of the ocean. And so perhaps that's a practice in which people can work with, is when they're wanting assistance in something, to give a gift to the earth. And this creates reciprocity, but it also creates which is reciprocity, relationship, and a symbiosis, and an exchange, and again creating spaciousness within ourselves. And it just keeps the cycle flowing, right? It just keeps the cycle flowing. And even in and then having just massive grace with ourselves and compassion with ourselves as we are going through the process of disintegration, which takes place before the integration. First, we have to fall apart, and first we have to unbecome and get lost. This is all part of the process in becoming and finding ourselves and remembering who we are, and literally like remembering who we are in our hearts and in our psyche, but also remembering the fragmented pieces of the self, which has been scattered throughout the quantum web of existence until it's not, until we call it consciously back, until we call ourselves consciously back.
I love that. There's so much wisdom that was brought in that little bit, and I love, like, I personally haven't participated in that kind of a practice, but when I feel into it, it just seems right in so many levels. First of all, like when we're on this journey, it's about going within, but also reconnecting with the earth, especially for some people, they might have been blessed and they've been outside and they had the upbringing and that. But so I love that practice involves connecting with the earth. And yeah, there's so much beauty in that. I'm actually gonna go into that and see how I can participate in that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned shaman. And so I would actually like to shift gears a little bit and talk about something that I'm really excited about, because in meeting you and experiencing your beautiful light, I feel like what you have to share on this topic is really profound and needed in this time, as everyone's sharing is in service. So since we touched on what the eclipse brings for individuals, right? Like facing everything that needs to be coming up. I would be curious to know, how is it similar, if at all, to going through an ayahuasca ceremony?
The eclipse?
Yeah.
Or
going through the eclipse and having that process of things coming up to look at.
yeah. So I mean, this is the nature of the medicine. is so there's a lot here, and one of the most profound workings of this medicine is it's a purgatory. So it assists us in what I like to refer to as the sacred purge. And so this is again part of like the disintegration and the peeling back the layers, or the shedding of the skin, and pulling apart the false self that has been, constructed through conditioning and programming of how things should be and should look, and how we should be and should do and should look, etc. And so like these astrological happenings, such as an eclipse, I wouldn't say it's subtle, but it's not so in your face. With ayahuasca, at least in a ceremonial context where it's the full brew, containing the vine Banisteriopis, which is brewed with a component containing DMT. Most commonly, it's a bush or a leaf known as chacruna, which contains the DMT molecule, or the spirit molecule, which creates the two brewed together create the psychospiritual experience. And it can be very intense. And that is a proper word for this context. That is the proper word. But it's in your face. It becomes impossible not to see. So she takes us to a place within our psyche that perhaps we don't have access to on our own, or we haven't allowed ourselves access to on our own, because of the barriers and the boundaries and the walls that we have constructed to protect ourselves, because we're human and we go and we feel, and that's part of the beauty of life. And that's actually, like what Taurus does. It feels a lot, and it likes to feel, and it wants to enjoy. And so in sitting in ceremony with ayahuasca, it is we can run, but we can't hide, essentially. And so it can be challenging. It can be some of the most challenging journeys that anyone might undergo. And it's because she's literally carrying us through the places and spaces within our psyche and our heart that we have not had the courage to go on our own. And even like, and that's the role of the shaman as well, as to assist and to hold space. And one of the steps in on the path of shamanism, and what all shamans or people who have you know, identify with that label or that word or that role and that archetype is people who have gone into their own death and darkness and have returned. And it's not like returning to the same spot. It's almost like it's like walking through it and exiting it. And so they've been in those realms within themselves to where they can assist and guide. And they've done work there and woven themselves back together and allowed themselves to be emptied of that which they are not, some of the, if not like the dense frequencies that they've carried up until that point, to where they can hold immaculate space for others to go in and release the densities that they're still carrying, and then return to the light. And then even finding the light within the darkness. I don't know if that makes
I
sense.
love that. Yeah, it did, because I'm sitting here and just being in with it, all of that, and it's such a an intimate journey. And in that journey, as you mentioned, the shaman is it's a crucial piece in it, in guiding.
Absolutely.
And my experience with you, the way that you hold space, it's so heart-centered, and I'm not sure if you can touch on this at all, or if not, that's fine too, but I feel like the way that you approach this, and of course I've only seen videos of people mentioning it and so forth, so I don't have any actual personal experience with it, but the way you approach this seems like it's such a unique way. And from the little bit that I've known of you, I know you work and you're, however you want to word it, with the Sophia Christos Collective. Can you touch on anything that comes to your heart regarding how you approach things from that?
Yeah. This has been part of my awakening and remembering my lineage and my relationship with the Christos. And I remember, I can't remember exactly when it was, but like, let's just say a few years ago, my sister actually, and I'm grateful for her, because she was like, who do you pray to? What do you pray to? You know, and I'm like ayahuasca and my plant allies and my ancestors, you know. And she was like, girl, you better start praying to Jesus. And but it got me thinking, you know. And I was like, why did I write this being out of my heart? And so and even before that, like backtrack a couple of years prior to that, when I first started working with ayahuasca, I remember journaling after my first ceremonies, and my intention was really to find my purpose. I'm like, why am I here? I was at a big crossroads, not even a crossroads. It was just like totally lost. I had left a marriage, a corporate job, and I was just, my world had been flipped, and I didn't know who I was, and I didn't know who I was. Like I had given myself to, I got lost in the other person's world, essentially. And so, and in the world at large in which I was living in, which had these constructs of what life looks like, right? Like the American dream and blah, blah, blah. So I was asking for my purpose. Why am I here? And it was my third ceremony in which I was shown my path in curanderismo or shamanism, and leading specifically ayahuasca ceremonies. And I remember journaling after that. And I was raised as Christian, a Lutheran. I went to church on Sundays and did like Wednesday Bible study and things like that. but it never really resonated. And there was always like, there was something missing, right? Like I just knew that it wasn't the full story, but that's all I could really say. So it didn't resonate, and I kind of just like would zone out. But after my first ayahuasca ceremonies, I remember writing, I had found, and this was another intention, I wanted to find teachers and like guidance on my path forward. And so I had found my teacher, I had found my medicine, my teacher, my I can't remember, there was one other one, but it's not coming to me in this now moment, but I had found my church. And that was what my devotional practice turned into, was communing in sacred space and ceremonial, and in a traditional Amazonian traditional way, the way in which my teacher held space. And I became a devoted student. And so fast forward back to when my sister asked me, like, who do I pray for? And sort of like dropped the consciousness of Christ back into my awareness through the name, the person Jesus. I started to wonder. And then I was actually guided to connect with Brooklyn. And it was through my working with her that she really helped me to remember my Christos lineages through song and transmission and sound technology, and the sound technology, and then also just like linguistically in conversation, what I was going through. And so in time, I started to, again, like continue sitting in ceremony and working with the plants. And I began to learn through the plant consciousness, specifically the consciousness of ayahuasca, also in the process known as la dieta, or the dieting process, going to the jungle and living in solitude and following different disciplines and communing with plants through drinking their medicine. They would teach me. And I mean, it's just so, and this is something I've been thinking about a lot too. Ayahuasca is commonly known as like the mother medicine or grandmother medicine. And I am seeing the parallels, if not the interrelation between ayahuasca and the Divine Mother, Mother Mary. And there's a medicine wheel that I work with. It's the 20 count medicine wheel. It's known as the Song of the Universe. And it's said to be the wheel, the one medicine wheel that all the indigenous tribes could agree upon. And so it was like a peace treaty. And the 13th count is, so not only is it the 13th, the divine feminine, this just dawned on me yesterday, to be honest. And the 13th count is the count of the spirit of all plants. It's also where White Buffalo Woman stands, Lady of Guadalupe, Mother Mary. It's the mother, it's the divine mother archetype. And it holds the same direction as the plants. And so I feel as if the plants are really here to assist us through working with them intentionally, like we're communing with the earth, right? So it's a process of ascension, going down and in, and it's through the process of going down and in which we essentially are ascend and carry ourselves back into the union with the divine. And I find that ayahuasca specifically has the capacity and the duty, it's like her dharma, to prepare us, humanity's consciousness, and return us to the temple of the divine through the sacred purge.
I love that. I love that because I too grew up in a Christian-based religion, and not that there's any wrong or right to anything, and there's much love to everyone who resonates with religion, but it's like you really like, but go outside the box with like, yes, Jesus and Mother Mary are not just religion. It's all things. We're all one. It's in all things that are unified in consciousness. That's all about love. And I know those are two aspects of working with the medicine. So one thing that I really love that how you approach working with someone, and we can get into the specifics a little bit later, but you don't just using my own terminology, like just will and deal, like you have people go through this process of like, it's just very evident to me like how much this means to you and how much you really want them to be understanding of all of this process. Is that a usual teaching of shamans, or how did you come to want to really get the person through this deep overview of the experience?
I appreciate you recognizing that. It was guidance. This is the way that I was shown that I would facilitate this medicine. And this is also the way that I was taught through my own personal experience of it not being done this way. And so when I first started working with ayahuasca, I had a spiritual practice. I was a yogi, I meditated, I was conscious about what I put into my body to nourish and sustain myself to a degree, right? It was kind of like the 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
Then I began working with, so I came to this crossroads and I began working with ayahuasca, and I was having these profound experiences in ceremony. I was seeing my path. And I even remember asking, like, show me my shadow. And I was like, looking at hindsight, I'm like, girl, you're crazy. Don't ask that. No, I'm just kidding. And so, but really, I realized that it was my higher self, right? That was placing the intention. And even still, like, some people get caught up on the intention, and just like trusting that you're here. We don't have to have a perfect intention of words strung together. And that our higher self is already in communion with the medicine. And so when I would step out of ceremony, I was just like expanded and just like blissed out. I was like, this is awesome. And I was also put in this perfect environment to where all of my deepest core wounds were being triggered and activated. And I couldn't not look at it. And so I call this like the ugly side of ayahuasca. Like, she brought my ugly right up to the surface. And even on a physical level, like I started to go through, and it's all connected, right? We know that. So it's like, if it's showing up physically, it started deeper. It started in the heart, or it started in the mental body or the spiritual body. But even like physically, I started to break out in like cystic acne. And so this is the purge, right? So I was going through like a purging of emotions, and it was deep and it was dark and it was heavy and it was scary. I didn't have the understanding what was happening to me. I didn't realize that I was still in ceremony after the ceremonies were long over, and the medicine was still working with me long after the shaman blew smoke down my palms and closed the ceremony. Months and even years, in fact. And so in that time period, I was being prepared. I was going through the dark night of the soul, and I was peeling back the layers. It was like really, really uncomfortable, and there was a lot of grief that was coming up to be felt, and really the only way out is through. And so feeling it is much of the process. But I didn't have really the support at the time. So the understanding, I didn't have the support. I didn't have the tools. I didn't know what I was doing. It was just like, I was like, I'm falling apart. Like, I did this to get better, and I feel worse. So it was the healing crisis that was taking place. the process of getting well. And oftentimes that looks like it getting worse, it seems so, right? But we don't understand it through the human lens. And so I got to a certain point so I started doing other sorts of studies and got my certification in the coaching practice, in which I weave into medicine working, which works with the unconscious mind to address trauma, release emotion, things like that, emotional awareness, and cultivating personal awareness, because the first step to change is awareness. And so we need to see first or feel first before we can address something and apply change to something. And so yeah, my whole journey was really preparing me. And then finally, when I went to the jungle for a 3-month, essentially, initiation, I was not shown, but the download for this offering, the Serpent and the Rose, which is a larger container, where I essentially work with people for a period of time before ceremony. And to prepare them and start cultivating awareness, start stirring up the unconscious mind, bringing light into the shadow, implementing practices, and to prepare them to a degree to sit in ceremony. And then also having a container on after ceremony and integration to have the support, in which is, it's necessary for most people, even if it's just like a conversation and a reminder to continue to have faith and reconnect the person who is in communion with the vine, ayahuasca, to remember their intention and to continue to have trust, faith, and surrender as they undergo their process of awakening and becoming and transformation. Yeah, so it was partly, it was I realized too, it's like the whole thing was an initiation. And even before that, like, it was just like, it was these opportunities in life that that bring you to your knees, or that just rip your heart open and empty you out, in which provides you an opportunity where you're just preparing yourself for the next expression and greater embodiment of your Christos blueprint.
I love that, because it's so perfect that you went through that experience, so you now share your service in a way that you do it so beautifully. And there's been a little bit of a rap that someone going through this experience, it's scary. And I'm just going to try to word this the right way. When something's scary, it's just because it's unknown. And there's a lot of unknown with the medicine, because it's bringing up stuff that you're not aware of. But the way that you have molded that to basically give you the most grace and ease while you're going through the unknown, I just think personally for me, if I were to endeavor on a sacred going through your consciousness and raising your consciousness, I would want it to be in that container. So it sounds like surrender and trust to the process is key. Is there any other important tools that would be helpful to navigate?
So it's interesting. Surrender is probably the biggest. Trust not only in the medicine, but trusting in ourselves. And ayahuasca is like she's like the maestro or maestra of surrender. She's like the grand teacher of surrender, because you can't stop it, right? Like, once you start, you cannot stop it. There was a ceremony that I was actually co-facilitating, and somebody wanted it to stop and got really mad because we couldn't stop it. And it's interesting too when that comes up. It's like, well, when we engage in like drinking alcohol or you gotta ride it out. It's not going to stop just because you want it to.
Mhm.
So, but specifically with this medicine, it's not the medicine to, it's like commit. If you're not ready to commit, then perhaps you're not ready to go on this type of journey. And really, I feel like that applies in everywhere in life. But again, ayahuasca is just an amplifier. And so everything is amplified to where we can really just experience to a deeper degree and a real degree, the true degree of the ways in which we are not treating ourselves with kindness and love and respect. And so sometimes it's like people receive, it's like, yeah, I was told to like change my diet or quit smoking. And it's like, yes, it can be as simple as that. But once we've reached a degree of purity, which most likely you're, like you've expanded beyond engaging in certain activities such as smoking cigarettes and drinking alcohol and like engaging in these toxic activities, to where that's when we start to tap into the more profound teachings and like the guidance and the like some of the experiences in which people really praise the medicine for. And so okay, I was like, what was the question? But really it's to trust and to surrender, because when we are when we're pushing, when we're willing against something, then or in conflict and wrestling and warring against something, then we are creating contraction and barriers and walls to where nothing can enter. And so when we surrender, we open. And when we open, when we surrender to a certain degree, when we are open enough, that's when the higher consciousness of whatever, ayahuasca, divine mother, whatever consciousness we're working for with can enter in to assist and carry us through that which we've already been resisting on our own. But it's challenging. Like when people resist, it just shows, you're only fighting with yourself. And we're not getting anywhere when we're fighting. And we're not getting to the magic and the alchemy when we're fighting. We're actually just creating more fear, pain, and suffering in the resistance. And so the biggest key and tool is surrender, like primarily just surrender. And like a mantra to work with is just, whether you're in a ceremony or you're in a difficult experience in life, it's like, okay, how can I surrender? So like working with the breath, like slow and steady to help assist in down regulating the nervous system to where you can surrender and you can open, and then the medicine can assist you in moving through this challenging experience.
There's so many aspects of that like I could go on, and what I just want to highlight that I love that you brought it back to also trusting in yourself, because regardless of what we're doing, like it comes back to you, ours with you, but definitely this beautiful, profound plant allies here for us if we're feeling called to. And I feel like you were already intuiting something that I was going to ask. So I'll just ask it, maybe if there's anything else that comes to the heart. If someone is contemplating whether or not they should participate in a ceremony, is there certain things they should fill into, whether or not this is an appropriate time for them to, or if this should be done later on after some work, or is that part of your service that you can?
Yeah, like I might feel into, well, what is the resistance? Fear is, like any big portal. And we've had other conversations around this, like, what am I letting go of? And like, what is the emotion coming up around the letting go? Because there's grief that comes with letting go, regardless if it's a toxic thing we're letting go of. And so I would, offer the suggestion to feel into, where is the resistance or the hesitancy coming from? Is it coming from like fear of, I'm literally not prepared, like I need to like So there are contraindications. For example, antidepressants are a big contraindication. It's a dangerous contraindication with the medicine. There's a chemical interference that can be dangerous. And so part of the preparation for somebody who is dependent and or using antidepressants is to wean off the antidepressants and to become more stable. And we don't have to be totally stable, right?
Yeah.
But more building trust within ourselves, building emotional awareness and intelligence within ourselves to where we can sit with these human experiences that are part of the experience that unfortunately a lot of like Western ways and conditioning, specifically in the medical system, has indoctrinated the way in which, you know, it's like these feelings are bad and there's something wrong with you and now you're depressed, which freezes this emotion of sadness in time. It turns it into an identity. I am that. I am depressed. To where there is an unconscious psychological dependency now and a fear that they need this in order to feel better. And so ayahuasca, it's a really empowering medicine, and it is an antidepressant. And so it's interesting that it does have a contraindication because you have to, you know, do a certain degree of preparation before you are ready to sit in ceremony with medicine so that she can assist you in getting to the root of the sadness or the depression that the Western medications are just muting and numbing and blocking. And so to answer your question, that was a bit of a rant off topic. And so feeling into like, where is this resistance and fear coming up? Is it fear of like stepping into my responsibility as a sovereign being? Because there is responsibility as a sovereign being. And as you know, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners know, is we are again in this system of the victim programming and entanglement. And a lot of us are unconsciously actually like benefiting from being the victim or benefiting from being the perpetrator or benefiting from being the savior. Like we get something from saving another, or we get something from another person saving us. That's like just you know, it's temporarily fulfilling a childhood wound of not getting enough, the need, the love and the nurturance that the children need.
Yeah, I love that. I think this is a good part to, okay, so what services do you offer? And since we were on that topic, and I mentioned like the way you work with people in ceremony is, it's so beautiful and in depth. Feel free to elaborate what comes to your heart, what you're offering, and the process. And you kind of touch on a few things.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. One of my so my most robust, if you will, and like well-rounded offering is the Serpent in the Rose container. And this is a women's circle. Currently, I feel like the Brothers of the Rose are stepping in and forward. And so there might be Brothers of the Rose edition in the future. So putting that out there for the brothers who, you know, might feel resonant in being held in space by the divine mother archetype and such. Because there is the healing of the divine feminine within each of us, regardless of the body that we have incarnated into. But it's the Serpent in the Rose experience, and this is really like the weaving of sisterhood. And this is currently it's a 3-month program. In the past, it's been a 9-month program. And so it's evolved a little bit. But what I found is 3 months is a really accessible commitment. And for those who would benefit for ongoing support, there's like the opportunity for that. And so this has a real emphasis on preparation, effective preparation and integration, and community. And so not only are we in community and getting to meet the other women in which we will be sitting and sharing ceremonial space with, building trust with each other, with our sisters, but also building trust with the facilitator and the space holder, which also allows a greater degree of opening and surrender to take place, and a deepening of the already profound experience that can take place, because truly we are the captain of our ship, right? And so I've just found that this is another quality that assists us in optimizing our experience. And so typically we'll start meeting about a month before the retreat itself, and then about 2 months after the retreat, both in community setting as well as one-on-one setting. And I also weave in my coaching practice as an integrated breakthrough coach. So I work with different tools and therapies and practices to help bridge the unconscious with the unconscious and bring them into greater alignment and harmony. And so a lot of this is addressing significant past experiences that are being stored in our neurology and our physiology as trauma, stuck emotion. So for example, when we're triggered and we react and we are feeling emotion that is not appropriate to the current experience. And so part of it is doing some of the unloading and the discharge and the release work before sitting in ceremony. And, once we start to go through and revisit some of these challenging experiences when we are in a conscious state or not in an altered state, we are also building rapport within ourselves that we can go through difficult experiences and we can get through them and we can feel and we can release. And the only constant is change. This isn't a forever thing, right? So all of that is in preparation for ceremony. And then afterwards, we have a community to connect with. And not only are we talking about like what's going on and the hardships and the feelings and what's happening, but we're also celebrating each other and building, again, just sisterhood with kinship people who, we didn't just grow up in the same town and go to high school together. It's like we bonded in ceremony and sacred space. And so that's that's like the most robust way and of working, and it's also the most accelerated path. Some people might be interested in working with ayahuasca and sitting in ceremony, but maybe they're not quite ready. So maybe we'll start with like coaching, and we'll start to unpack some of the trauma, unload some of the trauma, cultivate again emotional intelligence, and become more stable with ourselves, start to fall in love with ourselves again, start to treat ourselves with more kindness, cultivating trust within ourselves. And then maybe ceremony is in like a future timeline. And then also another cool, awesome way that I've been guided to start facilitating medicine is working with Pure Vine as well. So for people who aren't ready or for the psychoactive experience, maybe they don't want it, maybe they don't need it. Maybe they're like, I'm already open, my life is like a psychedelic trip all the time, like already, and I could benefit from the medicine, but I don't need a psychoactive experience. And again, this medicine is, so working with the Pure Vine, it's more subtle. So it's not the big bang experience, but it's just as profound. The medicine lies within Banisteriopsis caapi, the vine, Ayahuasca. And so this is the facilitation of the sacred purge. Again, just is peeling back, creating space, and beginning to, release and let go of some of the denser frequencies in which we're still carrying. And that might turn into a later experience of the full brew. So I do that both in group settings. I have an offering called the Allyship, which is just started. It's happening now. So we're doing it in community, working with Pure Vine, and microdosing, and I'll also offer song or ikoro to bring in the sound frequency of the master plant teachers in which I've established a relationship with in the jungle. So bring their medicine through song. And then I also work at the capacity of just like one-on-one. So maybe somebody misses the enrollment for the allyship, or maybe they're not feeling aligned with like a community experience, but they want to work with the vine. So truly at this point, there's a lot of like customization that's taking place and co-creation that's taking place depending on who comes into my space and what their needs are, what their intention is, and then we'll feel into some options together and find something that feels really aligned for that period time. Yeah.
I love that. So what would be what would be the best way for people to be reaching out to you?
Yeah. So my website is celestepalmercoaching.com. I also I have an online presence, so I'm active on Instagram. And I often have share my offerings through Instagram. And then just reach out to me, like send me a message on my Instagram and my website. There's an application process, and that gives me a really good idea of where you're at, what you're going through, what you want, what's preventing you from getting to what you want. It tells me some really important information that allows me to feel into the most aligned offerings that I have. And so, yeah, that would be the way.
Okay. So I love it.
Thanks.
I've shared
I love it
this.
too.
I shared this with you before, and truly, like, I don't just say this because I know you. What you're doing and how you're going about it, for me, it's so important nowadays to be so aligned with your heart and many other things. But to put it simply, what you do, you put your heart into this, and you hold people in that such a loving space. It's much needed, and I am so grateful that you're stepping into that.
Thank you.
You are so welcome. And
Thank you.
yes, I would love to know if there's any last words, if you will, or anything coming to the heart that you would like to share. Yeah.
Yeah, there's one message, and this is two messages.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe three. We'll go with two.
Yeah.
So these are messages really through my process of healing, specifically with the medicine. But it wasn't just for me in ceremony. It happened in ceremony so that I could take it with me outside of ceremony and share it with my community. And the first message, I received it when I was it was after ceremony. I had this profound experience reconnecting with the spirit of my father who's deceased. And I was experiencing a deep degree of grief that it was excruciating, right? It was just heavy. And it just dropped in like gratitude when it hurts, and gratitude especially when it hurts. And so this is just like when it's difficult and when you feel like it's so painful that you could die. Find gratitude, and gratitude is truly the key to pulling us out of the deepest despair that we've ever experienced. And then the second message would be surrender. And the deeper we surrender, the more we are helped. And so, yeah, if we're feeling disconnect, right? If we're feeling alone, then how can I surrender deeper and let go of the control in which I think I have, and just give it over to the divine and allow the divine to hold us and to usher us forward.
Mm. Mi hermana de la luz. Do you know what that means?
Sí, sí.
For anyone who doesn't,
Gracias.
for anyone who doesn't speak Spanish, my sister of life. Yeah,
Thank you.
it's been such a pleasure. And I look forward to future co-creations.
Yeah.
Honestly, there was so much more. I would love to touch on, yeah, many things. So I'd love to have you back on, and
Well,
we can have a part 2.
would love that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yay. Thanks for hosting.
Yes, no problem.